Good morning and welcome to Fast Horses Today. Today is a special edition of Fast Horses Today. We're going to be covering the Preakness Stakes, which is going to be run on Saturday, May 18th. And the Preakness is carded as the 13th race over there in Pimlico. And that race has a approximate post time of 6 o'clock here in the Central Time Zone. So 4 o'clock there in the Pacific Time Zone. So yeah, kind of a late post time there. I don't know that they've ever run it at that time before. But anyway, they have the daylight there, so it'll be no worries, no issues there. Looks like the weather is going to be clear, fast track, firm turf course, going to be sunny and warm there in Baltimore, so I don't think we have to worry about any type of weather as far as the track goes. So let's get started here for Preakness 2025. So we have a field of 9 signed on for the Preakness this year, and it got bolstered by the addition of Journalism, who, the folks there that own Journalism decided to run them back after the Derby, which, I respect their decision. And, I think that they've been doing a nice job with managing their horses over the last several years there at Eclipse Thoroughbred Partners. So, kudos to them. Journalism is your favorite at 8-5 is a program favorite in the race, with every reason because of, his record and, how he ran in a Derby. So no reason why he shouldn't be the program favorite. But let's go over the horses here, and I'm going to give you my picks and bets here for the Preakness. So, the one horse is out of the Baffert barn. It's goal-oriented. Baffert trains. Flavian Pratt rides. This horse has had a couple starts, and he's 2 for 2. So he broke his maiden at Santa Anita. This horse was a late starter. His first race was in early April over at Santa Anita. He broke his maiden in a nice maiden special weight there. And they ended up taking him over to Churchill Downs to run on the undercard there on Derby Day. And he ended up doing pretty well, winning an allowance race there in the slop. So, goal-oriented is 6-1 for in the morning line. We'll see what he goes off at. I don't have him in the race. I'm not going to be including him in my bets. I think Baffert's taking a shot here, bringing this horse into this race. I think there was some talk that he might be running in the Sir Barton on the undercard, but they decided to just go ahead and go for the Grade 1 Preakness. So, ambitious, it's fine. I understand the decision, but I'm not going to put him in today. The 2-horse is, of course, Journalism, as I mentioned, Michael McCarthy, Umberto Rispoli. This horse has done everything right in his career. I've liked this horse from the beginning when he first started. I mean, I'm more of a Southern California player, so I became very familiar with Journalism, pretty much from the outset, in his first race over at Santa Anita last fall. So this horse, I realized after watching his first race that he wants to run long, and he sure did. And he won, he ripped off 4 wins in a row after going long, including, the Grade 1 Santa Anita Derby. He ran a wonderful race in the Preakness. There was question, would he like slop? It was question for all of them. I think the horse ran perfectly fine. I think Umberto Rispoli gave him a great ride. I just feel like he got beat by a better horse that day in Sovereignty, and I liked Sovereignty that day. So, I watched the race a few times to see if there was anything there that I missed. What I did see was that, Journalism ran a great race, but honestly, he's very lucky to have come second. Baeza had some trouble, a little bit unlucky there at the top of the stretch. He probably would have come second. We would have seen a 3rd place finish from Journalism, but not knocking him, because I thought the horse ran an outstanding race, gave his best effort, and I thought everything was good. I just think that he might have gotten beat a little bit. I do have Journalism, under my exacta and trifectas, but I am not taking Journalism to win. I got another horse here that I'm going to speak about momentarily. I just wonder, is Journalism going to be able to give his A effort, after a tough Derby, because I thought he ran a really tough race. So we'll move on from there. The 3-horse, American Promise. American Promise, Dwayne Lucas, Nick Juarez. I think Nick Juarez is a local guy there in the Baltimore area. I believe he's from there. So, I'm sure he'll give his best effort. As we've seen, Dwayne Lucas having a bunch of success in the Preakness Stakes. And, with horses similar to this profile, they look like, he's a long shot today on Saturday. He's 15-1. This horse, ran okay in the Derby. On paper, it doesn't look okay, but, he was kind of, in the lead pack and kind of fighting, up there. He tried to make a move, and it seemed like he kind of got shut off. So, he ended up backing off there. So, you just draw a line through that race. American Promise certainly will be heard from in the beginning, I believe, maybe even on the lead. I don't know, but, it probably seems to be his best way to go. But I just don't know that American Promise has it to win this race. I'm not going to put him in. I'm not going to include him underneath either. Hard Honor. This horse comes from the UAE Derby and had been running strictly at Meydan in the United Arab Emirates. It's a family affair there. I know the trainer of this horse, Jamie Osborne, his daughter, is riding the horse there. So, it's a historic thing. So pretty cool there. She had ridden the horse twice in his last two starts and seemed to ride this horse pretty well. This horse is 12-1. I'm going to take a pass on this horse here. I don't know if this horse will be able to, come to the States and show up in a race like this. So I'm going to, put this horse out of everything there. 5-horse Pay Billy, is a local horse there. And I'm sure the local folks there in Baltimore will be, playing this horse or hoping for him, seeing that he'd done most of his running there in Maryland over at Laurel. But, he's a long shot, I think, with every reason. Don't have him in there. The 6-horse, River Tem. River Tem, New York bred, is Todd Pletcher as a trainer. Irad Ortiz takes the call here. Now, this horse has had 4 starts in his career, 2 wins, a second, and a third. And, it'd been originally ridden by John Velasquez, who had him his first 3 starts. And Irad Ortiz took this horse over when he rode in the Bluegrass over at Keeneland. This horse, really started out, like a ball of fire there at Gulfstream Park, winning 2 races by open lengths, winning at a sprint 6 furlongs, and then that sprint mile that they do there, that 1-turn mile, and opened up there and did well with nice, speed figures. This horse's first time 2 turns was in the Grade 2 Fountain of Youth, and who did he go up against? He went up against Sovereignty. No shame in that, because I feel like Sovereignty is the best 3-year-old in the country. But, River Thames, I thought he ran an outstanding race. He ended up, kind of he tried for the lead, ended up getting beat to the lead, and ended up stalking, which I thought was nice. It showed me an education for this horse, which I feel is very important with 3-year-olds, because they're always developing. I mean, they're developing physically, as well as they're developing mentally and learning how to run and learning how to run different styles to win races. So I thought that was a nice education there in the Fountain of Youth. And, may have won it if it wasn't for the greatness of Sovereignty that day. So got beat a neck there. They ended up bringing this horse over to the Bluegrass. And, I don't know if there was intentions on trying to get to the Derby or whatnot. I'm not exactly sure. But, the horse ran a nice race in the Bluegrass. Started out from the 1 hole. I thought he had a pretty poor start. It doesn't really mention that in the comments here, but I didn't think the start was all too good for a horse like him. So, he ended up having a stalk again, which, again, I have no problem with that. I like to see a horse overcome adversity, which I feel like he did. He ended up getting beat by Burnham Square and East Avenue there in the Bluegrass, which, again, no problem there. Burnham Square's a nice horse. East Avenue, was a really nice horse as a 2-year-old and seemed to have an affinity for Keeneland. So those 2 horses ran nice races in the Bluegrass. I thought River Tem ended up running a nice third. Ended up getting beat less than a length there. And I really feel like this, his efforts set him up for a really nice effort here in the Preakness. So, again, I'm not exactly sure why he didn't go in the Derby. I don't recall. But it doesn't matter. We're talking about the Preakness here. And I think this horse's, previous races set him up for a really nice effort here. Irad Ortiz, certainly a great rider. You can always expect a best type of scenario there when Ortiz is on the horse, putting the horse in a great position. What I do know of Pimlico, I only bet there maybe once a year. I've really not been a Pimlico fan, but I know that you can't really go wide on that first turn on those 2-turn races. It really takes the starch out of many horses, as I've seen. So I'm sure Irad Ortiz knows that. I think, in this race, I think that River Tem can get a nice, position, stalking, hopefully be inside, and, and just kind of run from there. So River Tem is my pick for the Preakness. I'm going to make a win bet on River Tem, and I'm going to put him on the top of my exotics. So I'm going to go with the 6, River Tem, at 9-2. Let's hope we can get that. I think we could. I think that a horse like Journalism will get a lot of action. I'm sure Horses like, the Bob Baffert horse will get some action. I think we'll get a good price on River Thames, so we'll go with that. 7 horses, Sandman. Now, Sandman was a big disappointment, I think, in the Derby. I had used Sandman in some of my exotics, and, he didn't show up that day. So, I'm not exactly sure what happened there. They're bringing him back here. Maybe he didn't like the slop. It's just not exactly sure what happened there. They're making a jock switch. They're putting John Velasquez on this horse. Jose Ortiz has a different horse in this race. Sandman's 4-1. I'm gonna just go away from Sandman tomorrow, on Saturday. This horse will probably get bet because of the connections and because of the social media aspect of it. This horse gains a lot of attention, and might end up garnering more wagering dollars, just like he did in the Derby. So, God bless Sandman, and good luck to the folks that are associated with Sandman there in the ownership group. So, I'm going to go against Sandman. I'm not putting him in. He's looks to me like maybe he'll be too far back. I'm not sure that running style is too good at a place like Pimlico. The 8 horse, Clever Again, Steve Asmussen training, and Jose Ortiz riding. So now I see Ortiz has ridden this horse twice over at Oaklawn in 2 wins. Now, those wins were by open lengths. He ended up, off a long layoff, 2-turn test in the maiden special weights. He ended up winning a nice race there, getting on the lead and wiring a field at 1 1/16, with a pretty nice speed figure. He followed that up with a very improved speed figure in the Hot Springs. Now, the Hot Springs is a listed race. It's not graded. I don't know that they get the best horses to run in that race there at Oaklawn. I know it's a fairly new stakes there in their schedule. Horse had a huge speed figure there, so there might be a lot of action off that figure. Him getting a 101 buyer. I'm going to take a pass on Clever Again as far as a win bet. Certainly Jose Ortiz has been riding really well this year, and he's ridden this horse pretty well too. So, I'm not selecting the 8 horse Clever Again. I'm just going to go against him here, and see if what this horse ends up developing into throughout this year. But I don't have Clever Again in there in the Preakness this year. And then finally, the 9 horses, Gosker for Brendan Walsh. Luis Saez rides the horse here. This horse coming off 2 wins himself, having winning at a 1-turn mile there at Gulfstream, and then following that up with a win in the Lexington over at Keeneland. Now, I know the Lexington is a graded race, but honestly, the Lexington ends up being really a kind of a side dish there. All the big 3-year-olds will point for the Bluegrass if they're sending them to Keeneland, and the Lexington ends up being, run a week later. And, I'm not too sure how the Lexington translates into, one of the American classics being the Preakness. But I don't have anything there with Gosker. He's a long shot at 20-1. I don't have him underneath here. So, all right, now let's go and recap the race and recap the bets and the ticket. Okay, so for the 2025 Preakness at Pimlico, post time again is about 6 o'clock here Central Time, 4 o'clock there in the Pacific Time Zone. And my win bet here in the Preakness is going to be on the 6, River Thames. I'm also going to make a dollar trifecta key. I'm going to go 6 on top of the 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, a dollar trifecta will cost you $12. And then also, let's do the exacta there, 6 on top of the 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, a $2 exacta, that'll cost you $8. So that's a total of $20 plus the win bet on River Thames. So if you see fit, you want to bet those tickets as is. I wish you the best of luck. If you want to add or subtract to those, you do what fits you best. I wish you the best of luck. Let's wish the folks over at Pimlico a very, very safe day of racing this weekend and on Preakness Day. Good luck to them. And, I appreciate you watching Fast Horses today and listening to the picks. So, again, thank you so much. If you haven't done so, please hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. It just puts you into the audience when new content gets created. And those that have subscribed, I really appreciate you. Thanks so much for hitting that button. It's really appreciated. You can like, dislike, make some comments. I promise to respond to everything. Let's create a discussion. So again, I do really thank you so much for watching, and let's have a great day on Preakness Day 2025 at Pimlico. Good luck to you.